New Brunswick's Bill 17 has passed third reading in the Legislative Assembly and became law on December 13th. The Higgs government's legislation effectively forces thousands of unionized public sector workers into so-called shared risk pensions, away from their current defined benefit plans, which provide a minimum guaranteed level of benefits for workers on retirement. The new law affects workers such as school custodians, bus drivers, and educational assistants, along with nursing home workers, among others. Union members in the public gallery heckled government MLAs as they voted for the bill on third reading on December 12th.
Mr. Ames, Miss Ames, Mr. Ames, Mr. Turner, Miss Barkers, Miss Wilson, Miss Wilson, Mr. Sudpress, Miss Yellen, Mr. Holder, Mr. Collins, Miss Shepherd, Mr. Wenborn, Mr. Dawson, Miss Anderson Mason, Miss Conroy, Mr. Carr.
Union leaders and opposition MLAs have called the bill an attack on the free collective bargaining rights enshrined in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Instead of focusing his efforts on getting his government in order and working on behalf of the people of New Brunswick, he is turning his attention to a personal vendetta against working people, using legislation to override freely negotiated collective agreements of workers across the province.
The member for Fredericton South and leader of his party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand today to table the names of 1,175 New Brunswickers who have signed a petition requesting that the Premier withdraw Bill 17 and instead honour the collective agreement signed between the Government of New Brunswick and education and nursing home workers. In total, workers from across New Brunswick collected over 5,000 signatures in just 2 hours on Saturday afternoon, showing just how opposed to this bill New Brunswickers are.
Mr. Speaker, over the weekend, my colleagues and I heard from hundreds of New Brunswickers, actually thousands of New Brunswickers, and we can see that here today because we have a gallery full of people from the Firefighters Union, the Teachers Union, the Nurses Union, the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco, and Grain Milling Union. Obviously, the school bus drivers, the nursing home workers are all here because they are deeply concerned about their future and about their pension.
Premier Blaine Higgs has argued that the current plans are unsustainable.
Forward to have a sustainable path on a pension program, have a future in the pension that was one that was balanced, was fair to taxpayers, fair to employees, and that was our goal, and that's what we agreed to in an MOU, Mr. Speaker, to spend 1 year getting progress and having a path forward. So, Mr. Speaker, at the end of that, there was an extension, another 3 months, and then another 3 months. And, Mr. Speaker, no progress of any kind. And in fact, our legal folks say, you know, there's nothing to arbitrate, there's nothing to go forward with because there have been zero progress.
But critics argue that the government has systematically underfunded workers' pensions to create the appearance of a crisis in the system.
Well, this is shock doctrine stuff, right? It's exactly it. Like, you know, create the problem yourself to get, to make the politics around getting your preferred solution supposedly easier. But I think the public, is pretty well aware of, that this is a government-created problem.
For more on this and on other labor issues, the NB Media Co-op spoke to Daniel Légère, president of the NB Federation of Labor. I started off by asking him about the significance of Bill 17.
Well, certainly on the pension issue, the best pension a worker can have is a defined benefit pension plan because he knows exactly what he's going to get when he retires. Back in 2013, there was a conversion of Part 1 of the public service into these deferred risk pension plans. However, the defined benefit plan is by far the superior plan from a worker perspective. Under a defined benefit pension plan, the employer, whoever that might be, shares the responsibility or has the responsibility of backstopping the pension plan. And from time to time has to make special contributions. Where under the deferred risk, the responsibility or the folks that might end up with the short string, unfortunately, are the workers or the pensioners. The significance of this piece of legislation is that, unlike in the past where the plans were legislative plans, they weren't negotiated plans. In this case, these pension plans are negotiated through the collective bargaining process. They're in the collective agreements. And from an organized labor perspective, the biggest concern around Bill 17, beyond the pension question, is the legislative interference with the free collective bargaining process. Let's make no mistakes about it. What Bill 17 is an attack on signed collective agreements and the rights to free collectively bargain. What it is the government giving them, by way of legislation, the authority to break signed collective agreements. Now, we haven't really seen anything like this since 1991, when Premier Frank McKenna broke signed collective agreements with the workers of the province. I'd like to add the shared risk pension plan, or deferred risk pension plan, is a tool in the toolbox. It isn't necessarily something that workplaces should never entertain. In some cases, pension plans are in a position where they're possibly facing a plan wrap-up, in which cases the shared risk plan would be a viable alternative. Like on the scale of pensions, the defined benefit by far is the best a worker can have. And probably at the bottom end of the pension scale would be an RSP. The shared risk finds itself somewhere in between those two. So it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world that no one should ever entertain, but it's just that. It's a tool in the toolbox, and certainly the shortcomings that the Higgs government is trying to address and forcing workers and breaking signed collective agreements to put them into a shared risk pension plan is wrong at this stage.
The NB Media Co-op has obtained a copy of a memo from the government, from the Deputy Minister of the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development, to education workers, warning them against illegal strike activity, saying that they may face discipline up to including termination, as well as fines under the Public Service Labor Relations Act. Any comment on this kind of memo going out to workers at this time?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of sad when you think these workers who worked through the COVID pandemic, who are there showing up to work every day to serve the people of New Brunswick, because they are public sector workers who are facilitating the education of our children, to when government, or certainly Premier Higgs and his Conservatives, want to ram through this legislation, that they threaten, bully, and intimidate workers with these kind of letters. However, never do these workers ever receive a letter saying, "You're doing a good job, keep up the good work, we appreciate you." It's you almost wonder, where the real priorities or the mindset of this government is when it comes to workers and certainly organized labor.
What are the next steps for the labor movement if and when Bill 17, which is expected to be passed into law before the Christmas break, does indeed go forward with royal assent?
Yeah, well, certainly CUPE is the union that represents the workers immediately affected. We are there to support and help CUPE, but they're the lead on this file at this point. But certainly the entire labor movement is watching this closely, both the private and public sector unions, because the nursing home workers are actually covered by the Industrial Act and our private sector entities. So it's the first time in a long time, or possibly ever, that governments have used their legislative powers to affect the terms and conditions of work for workers in the private sector. So we'll follow CUPE's lead. CUPE will strategize around that, and we'll be certainly offering any assistance that we can with them along the way. One of the things is the Minister of Labor made very, in my opinion, derogatory comments towards the leadership of CUPE in the legislature, all the while touting herself as as a trade unionist, and she certainly didn't and doesn't reflect trade union principles.
And I can only speak to my own experience as somebody who ran a union for 25 years. I went through the same experience. I was asked by the employers to convert to a shared risk plan. It was a tough situation all the way around. And I can tell you this. One of the things that I did for my membership, because I'm not a pension expert, union leaders are not pension experts. They're not paid to be pension experts. Pension analysts are. So in my particular case, what I did, none of the members liked it. But we were at a crossroads. I was getting nowheres in negotiations because I had a plan that was underfunded. And I had to figure out a solution moving forward. I could not unilaterally make the decision. I had to go to the membership and say, listen, how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do together? I don't like it. I don't like it. You don't like it. But what are we going to do to try to move forward? So we brought in pension analysts. And those pension analysts, we gave the membership the opportunity to meet with them one-on-one, because every single person's situation is different. And I can give you a few examples. Somebody who just joined the union, who was 25 years of age, young family, said, what's this going to mean for me? I didn't have that answer because I was not a pension expert. Somebody 65 years old who had on the tools probably for 40 years, had already raised their family, their wife had died, they were now raising their grandchildren, would say to me, what's this going to mean for me? Can I even retire now?
Get less, work longer. That's what it means.
Members, if you'd like to go to your ending room, Sergeant, please clear the gallery.
Like I said, private sector and public sector unions are watching this closely, or vehemently oppose this type of legislative interference. But also across the country, folks are paying attention, and they realize what's at stake here. What's next? This time, the government is using it to, the Conservative government is using it to attack workers' pensions. But once they've used it once, what's to stop them for using it for anything that they might want to?
I want to ask you now about the two coroners' inquests into workplace deaths that have been taking place this week. William Russell and Daniel Moore, both killed on the job. Any comment on that?
Absolutely, David. Any death is one death too many. Out of these recommendations, there always comes recommendations. From time to time, there's employers are held accountable, and I think in all cases, employers should be held accountable because every workplace accident is preventable. So there'll be recommendations come out of these two inquests, and hopefully they'll be acted on, and the recommended changes to WorkSafe will be implemented.
And of course, earlier this year, in September, a supervisor on a construction site, Jason King, was sentenced in a wrongful death of 18-year-old Michael Henderson, one of the workers at that job site. Thoughts on this case?
Well, of course, the labor movement followed that case quite closely. It went through the Court of King's Bench. Justice Christie heard the case and gave what I thought was a balanced and fair sentence to Mr. King. The young worker, just 18 years old, out of high school, looking for a career in the construction industry. Michael Henderson was his name. Was the tragic victim, and Mr. King was found criminally responsible for the death of Michael Henderson, and I think it's important, like I mentioned earlier, that employers and supervisors be held accountable when they are found responsible for the death of a worker.
Danny, before we wrap up, anything to add about any activities that the Federation has underway right now?
Well, of course, besides trying to stay on top of the activities around Bill 17, one of the things we have on our radar is we're organizing for the first time a youth summit. Historically, the Federation of Labor had a youth summer camp, week-long camp, the long weekend of August. But since the pandemic, it's been harder and harder to get interest from youth to give up a week of their long weekend in August and come to a week-long camp where we have fun activities, and also a big part of the camp, of course, is education, things like health and safety and how to stay safe at work. Tragically, too often young workers are the ones who are the victims of workplace accidents, but other topics as well. So what we're doing, we've shifted gears. We're trying something new. We're calling it a youth summit, the Blair Doucette Youth Summit. And because Blair was the past president of the Federation of Labor who started the week-long youth week. So this year it'll be at Broadleaf, I think. Broadleaf, yeah. Broadleaf in Alma. Kind of a retreat type of environment for youth. A lot of outdoor activities. And some valuable educational components to it, because these are high school age youth and are on the verge of entering the workforce.
Well, it sounds like a fun and educational opportunity. And where can people learn more if they would like to get involved?
Well, in order to participate, you have to be a child of a member of an affiliated union of the Federation of Labor, and actually after this interview we're finalizing our poster to send out, and we'll be sending it out to all of our affiliates to see if there's any youth interested in this fun-filled educational weekend in the 1st of May.
And that was Daniel Légère, president of the NB Federation of Labor. Thanks for joining the NB Media Co-op today. For more news and information, check out our website, nbmediacoop.org.
Before I begin, I wish to give land acknowledgement. We are coming to you today from the unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy nations. So we are here today with CUPE leaders from across the province to address Bill 17, which is now passed to a second reading in the legislature. Once again, Premier Higgs and the PC party have decided to trample on the rights of workers and all New Brunswickers.
Free collective bargaining is a fundamental democratic right enshrined in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Workers across Canada in both the private and public sectors freely negotiate collective agreements with their employers all the time. While these negotiations can be contentious, they are ultimately built upon the foundation of trust. When a contract is signed, both parties, workers and employers, trust that both parties will honor the terms of that contract.
With the introduction of Bill 17, Premier Higgs has demonstrated to New Brunswickers that he cannot be trusted. He does not believe in due process that makes governments and labor relations work. He believes that he is above the established legal processes, and he seeks to legislate things when it doesn't suit his agenda. He has dismantled democratically elected decision-making boards in healthcare. He does not even believe in informing his own party when he decides to introduce policies or legislation that will throw the province into disarray. It's obvious that Higgs is desperate. His government is frustrated. 6 of his MLAs have stepped down from cabinet positions in recent months. Instead of focusing his efforts on getting his government in order and working on behalf of the people of New Brunswick, he is turning his attention to a personal vendetta against working people, using legislation to override freely negotiated collective agreements of workers across the province.
At the heart of Higgs' betrayal of workers is the very deal that led to the end of the province-wide strike in 2021. These are issues that had been dealt with in bargaining. By all free and fair methods, we consider these issues to be settled. Higgs and the PC party are considering opening up this can of worms again. We don't think this is what New Brunswickers want. But to blame Higgs, these issues are not settled because he did not get his way. And now he is demonstrating to New Brunswickers that he does not care about your rights when they stand in the way of his own agenda. It appears that for Blaine Higgs, contracts are mere words on a page that he believes he can ignore when it does not suit his interests.
But for hardworking people across New Brunswick, these contracts are more than just words. Contracts are the promise of earning a decent living, of putting food on the table for your family, of not having to choose between medication or making rent, and of knowing that one day that you will be able to retire with dignity. Solidarity statements have been pouring in from unions and community organizations from across New Brunswick in response to this terrible bill. As has happened in other provinces, when an underhanded premier decides to overstep their authority, Labour is coming together to defend the constitutionally enshrined right to collective bargaining. And right now, I'm just going to list some of the unions that have joined us in this as we prepare to address this issue. So first and foremost, we have the Division of CUPE New Brunswick, and we have 29 CUPE locals from across New Brunswick who have joined us. Furthermore, the Canadian Labour Congress is showing their support. The Congress of Union Retirees, the Atlantic Provinces Professional Firefighters Association, Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers and Grain Millers International Local 406, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers Fund 8105, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers 37, International Longshoremen's Association ILA 237, the New Brunswick Federation of Labor, the New Brunswick Nursing Union, the New Brunswick Teachers Association, the New Brunswick Union, Public Service Alliance of Canada, United Food and Commercial Workers, and Unifor, just to name a few.
The unions in New Brunswick understand what is at stake here. They know that once a government gets used to ignoring rights that it deems to be inconvenient, who knows how far the government will go on trampling further New Brunswick rights of New Brunswickers. Meetings with heads of unions and other labor bodies have been scheduled for Tuesday afternoon to address a collective response to this legislation. But before then, we are calling on all New Brunswickers to show Blaine Higgs and his MLAs that we have lost their trust. We encourage all New Brunswickers to contact your MLA, contact the Premier. Let them know that you will not stand for a government that attacks workers and their families and undermines trust in our public institutions.
And especially to the members of the PC party, we ask you to take a good look at your party and your Premier. Is trampling on the Charter of Rights of Working People of New Brunswick the issue that you want to stake your political career on? Is eroding the public's trust in their government and public institutions the legacy that you want to leave? You still have a chance to turn back from this terrible legislation and stand with the working people of New Brunswick. It's not too late.
Merci, Steve. Thank you, Steve. I will now go to Serge Claude. Serge, if you can unmute. Sorry, Serge, you're still muted. Voilà.
Bon matin tout le monde. Tout d'abord, aujourd'hui, nous sommes réunis pour déclarer le projet de loi 17, présentement la deuxième lecture du gouvernement en Chambre. C'est une attaque directe, une attaque au droit à la libre négociation en brisant des contrats de travail déjà signés. Une déclaration de solidarité a été signée par plusieurs locales et syndicats et plusieurs associations. Nous demandons à tous les députés à travers la province de voter contre ce projet de loi, et tout particulièrement les députés conservateurs. Aussi, nous encourageons tous les New Brunswick à appeler leurs députés lui dire qu'ils sont contre ce projet de loi et passer un message clair à travers la province. C'est.
Merci, Serge. Puis simplement pour faire un peu de pouce sur ce qui a été dit, dans la liste des syndicats qui appuient nos efforts pour se débarrasser du projet de loi 17, pour faire en sorte qu'il ne voie jamais le jour. On a la Fédération des enseignants, on a Unifor, on a les pompiers, on a plusieurs secteurs privés, syndicats du secteur privé comme le BCTGM, le syndicat des postiers, le syndicat des électriciens, le syndicat des débardeurs à Saint-Jean, le ILA, le syndicat du Brunswick, le syndicat des infirmières, je crois que j'ai déjà mentionné, l'AFPC, le UFCW, c'est-à-dire les TUAC, les Travailleurs unis de l'alimentation et du commerce, et d'autres. C'est assez encourageant. Cette semaine, on devrait recevoir plus d'informations sur ce que le gouvernement tente de faire au niveau des prochaines lectures. Il y a toujours 3 lectures à tous les projets de loi. Donc, on espère que ce projet de loi-là n'ira pas plus loin qu'une 3e lecture et sera arrêté, ou du moins amendé à un point où est-ce qu'il n'y a plus de dents. So I will now open the floor for questions from media or panelists. So questions from media, des questions des journalistes. Please raise your hands, and I will start with David Gordon Cox from NB Media Co-op.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, I guess I'm just wondering if this law does pass and go into force, what are your next steps?
Well, as we had stated in this press conference, we're getting calls from every union in New Brunswick and further than that. We've had a lot of reach out from Quebec, from Ontario, from Alberta, from different groups right across Canada. And we would certainly be working with all of our partners to see how to address this.
It's I mean, it sounds like it's a charter challenge in the making potentially. Do you think that would be an option?
Sandy, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, obviously, we're going to take every legal route and option that we have, and we have lawyers on the ready because that's what this premier likes to do. He likes to fight us in court, tie us up in court, spend all kinds of money on all kinds of lawyers instead of doing the right thing for workers and their families. So yes, we will take that legal route. For sure. But again, what I would say is instead of taking on labor and fighting labor in court, why not sit, honor your contracts, and treat labor fairly and put all of that New Brunswick money that you're giving to lawyers and in these court challenge, give it to the workers and their families in New Brunswick. Give it to the nursing home workers. Give it to the bus drivers. Give it to those that you say that you can't give money to, and keep it away for money for legal purposes. We are quite confident we would win a legal challenge, but that's a ways off, and I think he knows that. So that will go on in the background, but that's not going to be our only response.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. I have Silas Brown from Global, and after that, Andrew Waugh from the Daily Gleaner.
Good morning. So, I mean, at this point, is there any consideration of walkouts or job action to try and stand in the way of this or throw some wrenches? This is a majority government that we're looking at. This can likely be passed by the end of next week if the premier doesn't want to back down. So what other tools are you considering using at this point to try and make this a little bit harder?
I'd like to answer that. First of all, we can't tip our hand entirely, but we are looking at every conceivable option before us. We are working with other unions. We are working with our own membership, with our own leaders. We have a meeting tomorrow afternoon with all of the union leaders in New Brunswick, private and public sector. So all I can say is that anything is possible.
I, I'm curious what sort of options that you have in terms of any sort of job action or labor action that would actually be, legal. Like, what would you potentially be putting yourselves at risk by pursuing some of these options?
Just a couple points. The question from before that, Premier Higgs loves to tie things up in court. And again, I'm not going to put myself and the members at risk of divulging what we may or may not do. We are looking at any and all possible action, up to including job action.
Merci. Silas, does that work for you? I see you're muted.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. After that, I had Andrew Waugh, Michel Corriveau, et Frédéric Camarano.
So if it's anything up to and including job action, has any notice of a potential strike? Have you given any notice to the government?
We didn't get any notice of this bill. They walked a letter down a hallway and gave it to groups. Again, we will do things in the most respectful way that we are able to. And, I'm not going to tip our plans at this particular time. We are still meeting with members of government. We are still meeting with people that, with other union laborers across this province. I think it would be extremely wise and in New Brunswick's best interest if this premier would walk this legislation back.
So we realistically know that he's not going to. We had a recorded vote on the first reading of the bill, and every PC MLA voted for the legislation. Were you surprised to see that it fell strictly on party lines? Did you expect like some of the PC MLAs who have maybe stood up to the government in recent months maybe take a different position?
Sandy?
I think not surprised in the first reading of a bill that what we had heard is many of them had no idea what the issue was. They were briefed after the first reading, which probably falls into line with the way this government acts. But I mean, I think all MLAs better think about their political future in this. They are going to stand in that house and vote. And there's an election, whether it's in the fall, whether it's in the spring, or whether Premier Higgs takes another tantrum and threatens to call one in January. We don't know. If they want to get elected again, they better understand how this touches all New Brunswickers. It touches all labor workers in this province and nationally when you bring in a law that breaks signed collective agreements. That is the cornerstone of all unions, and it's about trust with unions. When you sit and you sign a contract and then you throw away that contract because it's inconvenient. So I think that, we're talking to MLAs. We want our members, we want all New Brunswickers to talk to MLAs because they're going to be knocking on doors soon, looking for support. And they better remember how far reaching this goes, because this just isn't about three locals. This isn't about QP. This isn't about the public sector or private sector. This is about labor and signed agreements. And if I was any entity that signed an agreement with this government, I would be worried that the signature means nothing. So, they may be able to stand in the House on this, and hopefully it's a standing vote, but they're not far off from an election one way or another. So they want to think about this. This is not good labor relations, and it's not good for workers and their families in this province.
So just one last question. You say you've been talking to MLAs. So do you have any indication that some of the PC MLAs might change their votes as this bill moves?
We have no indication. We can't tell how people think, but I can tell you they were extremely surprised when they started learning the facts of how all of this went down. The narrative that's been played out in the legislature is that, QP's been dragging this. QP initiated the contact to have, with government. And there are, all kinds of evidence of many, many delays on this side of the employer in trying to resolve this matter. So once again, there's a lot of very false information that's coming out of this premier, and we're going to be dealing with facts. So I do know that the members on all three parties were very concerned with what the information that we shared with them.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to move over to Michel Corriveau, Frédéric Camarano, and then Jacques Poitras. Thank you all for using the raise hand function. And just before moving to you, I just want to add also what Steve said. QP sent from the two locals that were originally into this MOA process, they sent a request to trigger the process in September. They made it clear through letters saying we want to go through this arbitration process because clearly this is not going anywhere. And instead of working with the process that was signed in the collective agreement, well, a law was crafted behind the backs of everybody, including most MLAs, if not all. Next speaker is Michel Corriveau.
Merci. À moins d'une surprise vraiment extrêmement grande, le projet de loi va passer cette semaine puis va recevoir la sanction royale avant la fin de la semaine. Il faudrait quelque chose d'assez gros pour que ça ne se fasse pas. Qu'est-ce qui pourrait être assez gros de votre part pour empêcher que ça se fasse? Have you heard?
Steve, did you understand the question?
Oh, I understood it fully. Basically, like I said, we can't divulge what our plans are. We've been meeting around the clock with our own members, leaders of other unions, leaders of community organizations, and we have every option on the table at this point.
But est-ce qu'il est pas
and I know Sandy wants to respond as well, Michelle. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have all of our presidents coming in from around the province and their executives coming in tomorrow morning to Fredericton to further discuss. Then we have later in the afternoon meeting with all of the labor unions listed with, to discuss. So our membership, our leaders from across the province are coming in tomorrow to discuss next steps. So we have options we're putting before them. They are the decision makers. We're not the decision makers here. Our members are the decision makers. They are speaking loud and clear to us right now. They are not happy. So we're bringing those leaders and executives in, and further discussion will happen at 11 o'clock tomorrow at the Crown Plaza.
Est-ce que vous avez l'impression qu'il est encore temps de discuter avec que ce soit les députés, le gouvernement? Est-ce qu'il n'est pas trop tard pour ça, pour la discussion? Il va rester 4 jours, là.
Well, as mentioned, and everyone is fully aware, this was just introduced. These groups were in negotiations trying to resolve this matter. They were waiting for the premier to invoke the very process that he established, the dispute mechanism on this matter. And instead of getting a letter saying, okay, here's the third person appointed to resolve this matter, they got a letter saying, oh, forget about that process that we agreed to and signed on to. We're going to introduce legislation. So as you can understand, we just learned about this last week. So we've been working around the clock, and I am actually very impressed with our leadership members and the people that have come on board in less than a week.
Mais sans nous dire ce que vous allez faire mardi, ce qui va être discuté mardi, est-ce que vous allez aller au-delà des gestes symboliques?
Oh, definitely.
And more?
We certainly are looking at every action, and this is not just going to be symbolic.
Merci.
Merci.
Thank you, Michel.
Prochaine question de Frédéric Camarano de Radio-Canada.
Bien, justement, pour poursuivre sur ce que disait Michel, je veux dire, est-ce qu'on peut s'attendre à une grève? Est-ce qu'on peut s'attendre à une grande sortie des travailleurs dans les prochains jours? Puisque, je veux dire, le vote, il va se faire cette semaine. La sanction royale pour ce projet de loi-là devrait, à toute bonne fin pratique, se faire cette semaine. Donc, est-ce que vous croyez à des actions concrètes plus que d'appeler les députés cette semaine?
So I'm sure you can appreciate that as union leaders, we're not going to encourage our members to do illegal action. Now, what our members decide to do on their own, our very angry members, we're going to have to listen to what they're saying. But I can tell you our members are not happy. And this is not just the members of 3 locals who are having their collective agreements broken. These are our members and other labor unions across New Brunswick, because they can create a law to break any part of anybody's contract. So it's hard for us to say what our members will do. They believe what the government is doing is illegal. We believe it as well. We believe it is a violation of charter rights. We believe we're going to win that. So what the government is doing is illegal right now. And our members will decide what they are going to do to match that illegal action.
Puis si on devait en venir à la grève, j'imagine qu'il faudrait passer par un vote de grève, puis ensuite, il faudrait passer par tout le processus. C'est ça?
We will take direction from our membership, is all that we can, again, state at this point.
Parfait, merci. Prochaine question, Jacques Poitras. À moins que Frédéric, si tu avais d'autres questions. C'est bon.
Non, c'est bon pour moi.
OK, ça marche. Merci. Jacques?
Yeah, I would just like a clear answer. Like, would any job action be illegal on your part?
Again, what our members decide to do. No one is in a legal strike position, so then a legal strike process wouldn't have to be followed. So what our members tell us they're going to do, they're going to tell us what they're going to do about this. Again, we've had many meetings. We're just actually bringing everybody to Fredericton tomorrow for further clarification. There's been literally hundreds of meetings happening back with members to talk to members in workplaces to see what they want to do. What we can tell you is our members are angry. Our members feel what the government is doing is illegal. And they'll decide what action they are going to take to respond to what the government illegal action on behalf of the government.
Yes, I understand that point, but would you sanction or encourage illegal action by your members or discourage it? What would your stance be on illegal action by your members?
Well, I think we have to listen to what the members want to do. We're not the decision makers. The members are the decision makers, and they're going to decide how they're going to respond.
Well, you're the leadership, though. They look to you for guidance sometimes.
Well, the way our union works in CUPE, it is a bottom-up union. Our members direct us. We do not direct the members. So that's where CUPE is different in the scheme of things in the labor movement as to way that other unions or other organizations may work. Our members tell us what they want to do.
Ça marche. Je ne vois pas d'autres questions pour le moment. Je ne vois pas d'autres mains de la part des journalistes. I don't see any other hands up from media. I see that CTV is here and votre TVA est ici aujourd'hui aussi. Est-ce que vous avez des questions?
I'm okay, thank you.
Perfect. Excellent. Bon, ben, je vous remercie. Je ne vois pas d'autres mains. Donc, sur ce, Steve, Sandy, est-ce que vous aviez des mots de la fin? Do you have any closing words?
Well, I want to thank the media. I would like to thank our members and our leaders who joined us online. And I want to thank the workers, all workers in New Brunswick, for doing the great job you do. And, we can't have the lawmaker being a lawbreaker. This government needs to get control of itself really quick.
I just want to say it's not too late. This bill is not, it's not passed. It hasn't hit second reading. The opposition has put in an amendment that's being debated now. It's not too late for elected MLAs to listen to their constituents and do the right thing and not vote for this. That's the first piece here. We don't have to get into labor unrest, angry people in the workplace that are already angry. We don't have to get into this. MLAs are elected to represent their constituents and not always have to be along party lines. So we're hoping that every MLA will listen to the workers, the families, New Brunswickers, our allies, and not vote for this bill.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the members and the local presidents and the presidents and representatives from other unions to be here. Media, thank you very much for being here this morning. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde d'être ici. Je vous souhaite une excellente journée et soyez sûrs de rester au courant. Suivez les nouvelles de votre syndicat sur les pages officielles. Il y a toutes sortes de rumeurs qui courent en ce moment, mais suivez les messages officiels. So there's a lot of rumors flying right now, but please follow check your official union publications and emails. You take care and have a great day. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.